Hello and welcome to LionWing Talks, a show where we discuss all things LionWing, tabletop games, Japanese games, and localization. I'm Bradley Hailstorm, founder and president of LionWing. This is episode 37 for LionWing Talks for December 13th, 2023. Whoa, it's been a while. I haven't seen you guys in like 3 months. 3 months was the last time we did a proper LionWing Talks episode, and that is too damn long. There was a time, for those who've been around long enough, God bless you if you have, you've put up with me for many years now. There was a time when I used to do this show weekly. My, how the times have changed. What's funny is eventually I stopped doing the shows weekly because I didn't have enough stuff to talk about weekly. And now I've got more things than ever to talk about, and I'm still doing a show like once a quarter. That's just not acceptable, folks. I got to change that. So, it's been a while. I'm excited to be here tonight. I see we've got some folks in the chat. I got my chat off to that side of the screen. So if you see me look over there, that's what I'm doing. I got kind of a new setup here. In the past, it was a little bit more of like a widescreen shot. Camera placement was a little different. But as always, I got to represent my Arc the Lad laser disc collection in the back. I just said laser dick. That's unfortunate. I haven't even been drinking that long. Okay, so there's been a lot happening. A lot happening in the Discord lately. Freudian slip? Maybe. Yes, maybe it was a Freudian slip. There's been a lot of stuff happening in the Discord lately. There's been a lot of stuff happening on the internet about us lately. It's been fascinating to watch as a silent observer most of the time. It's been fascinating to watch. We'll talk about that, or we won't, here in a little bit. For those who are joining us for the first time, hey, welcome. I'm Bradley, like I said in the beginning. And this is a show where I just talk a whole lot. And usually I ramble for about 2 hours. I always tell myself, okay, this is going to be the time. This is going to be the episode. Episode 37 is the episode where I spend less than an hour on stream. And I say that every time with episode 36 on down to episode 1. And I think every time I've almost broken 2 hours. So you're going to hear me ramble a lot. I'm going to talk about lots of things. Like I said in the intro, this show encompasses, anything that I want to talk about. But mostly it's about LionWing stuff. But then we inevitably get into game talk, usually some dev talk, localization, Japanese games, of course. But there have been times where we've gone stretches where we've talked about PS1 JRPGs for way too long. So anything is up for grabs on a show like this. And if this is your first time watching us, hey, thanks for checking us out. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully you'll come back the next time we do this, which will hopefully not be in 3 months' time. That's too long. And for those who are returning, hey, folks, I see some folks who are returning in the chat. Thanks so much for coming back. I don't know why you keep coming back, honestly. I'm not that likable. But I'm glad you seem to think so, or I have at least hoodwinked you enough to think that I am likable, that you've returned for episode 37. In fact, I think some of you have been here for every single episode. There's something wrong with you. That's not right. That's not right. And I feel bad for you. So someone in the chat said, drinking wine out of a straw. It's not wine. It's not wine. I never reveal what the drink is. Now, if you were to guess it, you might get something special from me. But I don't know if anyone's going to guess it. I will give you a hint. It is a dark liquor that is a little bit festive mixed with something else. Have at it, chat. Guess away. So seriously, whether this is your first time here or it's your 37th time here, thanks so much. We got a lot to go over. Despite the fact that I dropped this on you all, I think it was Saturday night when I put a message up in the Discord, because people are reading Discord on a Saturday night. Like, hey, I'm doing a LionWing talk show in 4 days. You just drop me some questions. Despite the fact that I did that on a Saturday with no heads up, and then we're just here 4 days later, I got a lot of questions. People want answers from me. So I'm here to provide you with some answers tonight. We'll also go over not just the questions that were asked, but we'll also go into some project updates. I'll also talk about some staff changes at LionWing, some exciting stuff there. I'll talk a little bit about the distribution deal. And then anything else that you want to ask me about, ask me in real time. So just so everyone is aware, if you've never watched the show, I try not to read any of the questions ahead of time, or if I do read the questions, it's once, just so I can copy them over into a Word doc. Now, I didn't even do that tonight. In fact, I didn't get a chance to, so I'm just going to be pulling up the Discord and reading them straight from there, but I welcome you to ask questions in real time. I love questions in real time, but I also love coming to this kind of blind and not reading those questions ahead of time, because I like giving you authentic answers, and I like being put on the spot. Because it doesn't give me a chance to bullshit you. Now, the good news is, even if I read those questions ahead of time or something like that, I am historically a bad liar. So it's not in me to lie, which is why this show is really perfect if you want honest answers, because you ask a question and I'm just gonna answer it, for better or for worse, whether it's a good business move or not. That's what I do. That's what this show's all about. I started the show so that I could connect with you all. I realized that not a lot of companies had kind of like their top people reaching out to their audience regularly and giving the audience a direct line to them to ask them questions, provide them feedback and all that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be the person who does that. And I'm sure I'm not the first person who does that. I'm sure I'm not the only person doing that now. But I find it really important to ensure that I know what's happening at all levels of the company. And that means behind the scenes, but then also in the community. That's why I'm active in the Discord. Even when I'm not actively talking in the Discord, I am reading the Discord. I don't miss much. So ask me questions in real time if you want. I will absolutely answer those. I see some people have already thrown in some guesses as to what this might be. Let's see here. Mulled cider. No. Jaeger. No, I don't do Jaeger. I don't even know the last time I had Jaeger. I was probably in my early 20s, and that was many years ago. That was like almost half a lifetime ago. Don't do Jaeger. Don't like the taste. Don't like the effect. But keep guessing throughout the show. So, with that out of the way, I'm going to skip the preamble. Oh, I see we've got some more questions in the Discord. I opened up this right before I went on stream. I saw we had about 13 or 14 questions, and then we've just added 4 more. So let's do this thing. We're just going to jump right to community questions. It's probably what you guys want to hear about the most, and then we will go into project updates after that and all that. I'm not used to drinking out of a straw. Usually if you watch a show before, I've got a mug. I always have a mug. Tonight, I don't know why I went with the tumbler. I don't know how I like it. Okay. So, question number 1. In the Discord, now that Ultra Bomby is out in the wild, any update on a potential second gun and gun campaign? So, if you have come aboard the LionWing train in more recent months, or even more recent years, it's kind of wild to say, you probably know us from RPGs. However, there was a time when we did a lot of board games. Now, there was a particular card game that we localized and published a couple years back that was quite popular, called Gun and Gun. So Gun and Gun is an expandable card game, and it recently had a new content drop in Japan. It's had a couple new content drops since we released our version, and one of those I guess you could call them expansions. I don't know if I'd call it an expansion exactly, but I can't think of a better word right now. It's called Ultra Bomby. And it has gotten a lot of attention online, primarily because it looks rad. And so a lot of people have been talking in the Gun and Gun chat about whether or not LionWing is going to do another installment of Gun and Gun. So my stance on this remains pretty much the same as it did in the past, and that is Keep Dry, the company that makes Gun and Gun, and I have talked about this. In fact, we talked as recently as November the 9th about whether we can make this project work. So in full disclosure, Gun and Gun was a very expensive game to print and to deal with. It was way more expensive than it was originally projected to be. The timeline of that project got totally fucked up. It took forever for that game to finally get to market. It was an absolute shit show behind the scenes. Not of our own doing, I will say. Sometimes it's of our own doing. This one, Gun and Gun, was not of our own doing. A lot of printer mishaps. It's a printer that I no longer work with because of the printer mishaps in Gun and Gun. It turned out to be a very stressful project. One that, when it was done, secretly, I was saying, behind the scenes, like, I don't want to touch Gun and Gun again. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to read its text. I don't want to hear its name. I don't want to get in those assets. I don't want to communicate with the printer about it. I want to do nothing with this game again. Not because it's a bad game. It's a wonderful game, but because it was hell. That was like dev hell, that game. But it's been a while now since I've had to work with and inside Gun and Gun. And that's why I've been talking with Keep Dry about, hey, does this make sense to do another one, to have another go at it? And really all along, we've been talking with Keep Dry off and on for a while now, even long before Ultra Bomby came out, when Double Shout came out. We've been trying to make this work, but it's got to make sense for both Keep Dry and for LionWing. And so my approach this time around with Gun and Gun is a lot different. The terms of what I'm looking for in terms of a licensing contract are different because I now know what goes into that game, and I now know how that game can be deceptively costly to print. Now, I don't think it would be as costly to print this the second time around because I would do a couple things different. One is I would streamline the campaign and offer something a little bit more lean in terms of what the reward tiers and items, product would be. I offered a lot of different stuff the first time around, and that kind of got in the way and bogged things down a little bit. I wouldn't do that again. That stuff also adds up. Small things that in a vacuum are not expensive become very expensive when they all kind of come together. On top of that, Gun and Gun, with its timeline and when it was supposed to be printed, and then when it actually got printed, and then when it actually got put on a cargo ship, and when it actually made it to the fulfillment center and then had to be, shipped out to folks in those regions. I mean, this was 2020, right? So the pandemic was just getting started, and then this lasted well into 2021, and so costs just like blew up. And so a fairly affordable project became a fairly unaffordable project, but we were locked into it, so we had to go through with it anyway. And so it was one of the reasons why I didn't want to necessarily come back to it right away, is because it was far more expensive than it should have been, than it needed to be. But we're in a different place right now, with logistics, printing and manufacturing. We're at the end of 2023. This is a very different world with regards to printing costs and shipping costs than it was in 2020 and 2021 and even 2022. So we're getting back to a place of normalcy when it comes to those things, kind of stabilizing price. So I like Ultra Bomby. I love that it's got a solo option there as a solo tabletop gamer. I love when a game has a solo option. And so I'm very interested in working with Gun and Gun again. Probably I'm more interested now than I ever have been. And that's likely why I was just talking with Ken from Keep Dry a month ago. So I have said that I don't really want to do too many more board game crowdfunding campaigns or really publish many more board games. It's just not, that's not the company that we really are at this point. I have said, however, that there are some properties that I would revisit. And I think at this point, Gun and Gun is one of those properties that I want to revisit. And if we can figure out the behind the scenes boring business stuff, then yeah, I think seeing a Gun and Gun campaign is very likely. It will not be a Kickstarter. I'll be reserving Kickstarters for RPGs, but it probably would go to a Game Found or a backer kit, probably Game Found, because I think it would perform well there. And that's the crowdfunding platform with the most parity when it comes to Kickstarter and recognition among the board game crowd, the card game crowd, more so than backer kit, which is becoming more of an RPG kind of platform. So I'd probably go that route for it. So it would have some kind of campaign. If it was left up to me, obviously nothing has been negotiated, So for all I know, Keep Dry they'd be like, no, we don't want to do that. But if I had my way, if I had the ability to, then yeah, I'd do a second campaign and I'd put it on GameFound for Double Shout and Ultra Bomby, just like we did. And I'd probably name it like Gun and Gun Year 2, something like that. Okay. Question number 2, is there anything you can say yet about Project Dark Keys, given a certain pre-order that's shown up on Amazon and Barnes & Noble? Are we still awaiting an official announcement in January? So I will say this. We haven't announced anything. I will also say that you have to be careful about you have to be careful about these listings that go up. Because A, sometimes they're not real. Or at minimum, B, they're not accurate. So in a hypothetical world, let's say I was publishing a game that was attached to a globally recognized intellectual property. In no universe would I release that game 2 months from now without having even announced it or ran a long marketing campaign for it. I've never done that. And we've only published indie projects. So if I wouldn't do that for an indie project, I certainly wouldn't do it for a project that was attached to an IP. So, take that for what it's worth. Dark Keys will be announced in January. And so I'll have obviously a lot more to say on it then. But when that project is announced, you'll know about it and you will see it and you will hear about it. It won't be this clandestine thing where people are trying to figure out, is this real? Is it not? How come no one's ever talked about this thing? Like, you'll know about it. So yeah, so those listings were interesting. And that's not me being a smartass. That's, I know I have a reputation for trolling. That's legit. Those listings were interesting. Very interesting. Okay, next question. Any plans on getting back into board games outside of releasing expansions to games you've already published? So I've kind of already touched on this in the first answer, the first question. Not right now. Our business model has it's shifted. I know on the outside it looks like, okay, well, they're just a company who's publishing RPGs. It'd probably be pretty easy for them to pivot back into board games and card games. And it's not that simple. Like when you totally shift your business model, there are so many things that shift along with it. People on the outside, they just see the shift in product, but there's a whole lot of stuff that happens behind the curtain that no one ever sees that doesn't allow you just to quickly shift and pivot. And so, because we haven't announced any new board games we haven't announced any new board games, I wouldn't wait for those anytime soon. That's not to say that we won't do a board game again. And that's not to say that we won't do a board game that's not attached to an already established board game IP that we work with. As I've talked about, it's no secret. I would love to do more with Kradia and I would love to do more with Gun and Gun. But that's not to say that at some point down the road, I wouldn't want to, touch on some other board games or publish another board game. I mean, quite frankly, there's some stuff out there that I think looks really interesting that certainly if you rolled the clock back 2 years, I would be gobbling that up and I would be publishing it and it'd be on Kickstarter already. Things like Dungeon Dice Online, more small form board games and card games are very interesting to me at this point. Dungeon Dice Online, absolutely. If someone was like, hey, you have to publish a board game that's not a karate, it's not a gun and gun. It's just it's its own thing. You can only publish one. You can only publish one more board game. What would it be? I would say Dungeon Dice Online. Like without thinking twice about it. It's got all of the components that I look for in a more traditional tabletop game, a more traditional board game, and it is really kind of modeled around being a fast-paced adaptation of an MMORPG. So that game's very cool. I'm disappointed that more hasn't been done with it. I think the developer has, I think they released 2 expansions for it, and now they're moving on to something else. I think it's still within that universe. So I'm hopeful that they come back to Dungeon Dice Online. But yeah, that'd be super cool. I think that game's great. Honestly, though, I have to be honest. Ooh, it's a bad sentence. The Japanese board game scene right now is kind of weird. It's in a weird place. It's not super hot right now. And what is coming out of Japan with board games isn't necessarily stuff that would fit kind of the LionWing brand. I've noticed there's been a bit of a shift with Japanese designers in making more global games, games that would perform well in multiple markets, and not just in Japan or not just in the West, but for a very particular niche crowd who's into manga and anime. There's been a kind of a tonal shift, I guess you could say, and that stuff I'm just not interested in. So what is happening in that scene right now is not necessarily stuff I would choose, even if I were actively, scouting projects for the next board game. I haven't looked at the chat in forever. Let me look over here. What do we got going on? Retro. Yeah, it seems like a game you would like, Retro. He said, I wish you never mentioned Dungeon Dice Online. Just looked it up and now I need it. Yeah, it looks super cool. I love its small footprint. That's what I'm looking for right now out of board games. Like I've only got so much room on my shelves. I can't keep stacking up these giant boxed board games any longer. So the smaller, the better. Okay. Next question. Will you revisit the Embryo Machine franchise in some way, whether a TTRPG or board game expansion? That's a good question. Jack, I know I've seen you on Twitter, I believe, and you have engaged a lot with our Embryo Machine stuff, so I know it's of interest to you for sure. So I love Embryo Machine from an aesthetic standpoint. I like it from a lore standpoint, even though there's not a lot of lore in the board game version, at least not in the base game that we localized and published. But there is some pretty expansive lore in the TTRPG. I love the mech designs. The combat mechanics are fun. That project I basically lost money on, so I don't think I would revisit the board game version of it. It's just a game with a ton of components. Which is just crazy expensive to print. But also, a ton of components means like there are a ton of places to fuck up at. And I'm not trying to do that. So I don't think I would do anything with the expansions, not right now anyway. The expansions are super cool, I'll give you that. One of the expansions, I can't remember which one, you actually use the box as part of the game board because there is a battlefield that has a cascading waterfall. So you use the edge of the box to act as the waterfall drop off. And then that kind of feeds into the next portion of the battlefield. So you get some really cool terrain differentials there that would be fun to play with in terms of like the mechanics involved, but also just it looks super cool. Like, you don't see many board games utilizing its box as one of its components to the mechanics that you're going to be working with inside the gameplay experience. So I love that. Yeah, the funny thing is Embryo Machine started off as a TTRPG. It is a Group S&E project, so most people know Group S&E from Sword World. They've done a ton of other stuff as well, including the Elden Ring TTRPG. Obviously, they've been around for decades. They're prolific. Yeah, that's their property. Mosaic is the company that published the board game version of it, but it is a Group S&E property. And so with Group S&E comes a certain pedigree, a certain design pedigree, and quality factor. And I think that that pedigree is on display, and that quality factor is exemplified in the role-playing game. So the role-playing game is it's great. I mean, there's a ton of supplements for it. So it was well supported. I think it was published by Interbrain, which is now Kanakawa. I mean, it was a big deal. It's what spawned the board game in the first place. Now, what's even cooler is the combat that's in the board game wasn't necessarily created for the board game. It was already existent in the RPG. So the RPG is the board game, just with role-playing game mechanics, and a lot less components. But I will say that if we ever dabbled in Embryo Machine again, and we would dabble in that property again with the RPG, we at least know how to make some of those components, those supplementary components that could enhance the gameplay experience. So I think the RPG would be a nice compromise between giving you the Embryo Machine experience while allowing us as LionWing to A, do what we're really passionate about, which is RPGs, but then also B, produce something that is a hell of a lot less costly than the board game. So someone in the chat said, I would love to see more good mecha-focused TTRPG in the English market. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that there are not a lot of those around. I think that's probably because mecha, by and large, at this point anyway, there was a time when this definitely was not true. But it's certainly, if it's not true now, it's definitely becoming true. And that is mecha just doesn't sell. And yeah, you can point to the Lancers of the world and you can say, well, look, those are mechs. And I'll say, I mean, yeah, like, you know, every once in a while, something that shouldn't sell is going to sell. And Lancer's a great game. That's why Lancer's so popular. That's why it is sold as well as it has. Is because it's a great game and it just happens to have mechs inside the great game. But by and large, mechs don't sell games like they used to. And they certainly don't sell games in Japan anymore, which is why there are like 2 active mecha-based TTRPGs in Japan. And those are indie. And while they have their own following, they're not big followings because the Japanese audience don't like mechs. Unless you've got Gundam attached to the title, robots aren't interesting in Japan. So the folks who would traditionally, you would think traditionally would design the mecha TTRPG are not going to likely design the mecha TTRPG because it's not going to sell in their primary region. And then even if they designed it in hopes that it would sell in the West isn't going to buy it either. So that's why they don't exist. And it's unfortunate because there is an audience out there. Don't get me wrong. I don't want people to take this as me saying there's not an audience out there for mecha stuff, because there totally is. They just tend to not show up for board games. And even when they show up for other properties, they simply don't show up in as large a numbers as they once did in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s and even mid 2000s. So a lot's changed though, right? So it's unfortunate. And could we fill a void there with something like Embryo Machine? Yeah, probably. And I'm not ruling it out. I have a lot of the books. I am familiar with the property. I know Group S&E. So yeah, I mean, it would make sense in many ways. It's not in my immediate release calendar. but I definitely would not rule it out. Let's see here. What did I miss over here? Yeah, so it's funny because in some ways I don't think about Princess Wing as being mecha. It is. It totally is. But I guess when I'm thinking about the like the SEO tags, I always think about Magical Girl first, for whatever reason. And I love Princess Wing, by the way. Oh goodness, I do think that game, because it's not traditional mecha, would probably do pretty well over here. So I think there's a fan translation going on, or at least it started, or there was talk of one starting for Princess Wing. So I know that there are people out there who are at least interested enough to want to translate it on their own. So yeah, someone in the chat said I have a soft spot for Princess Wing, and yeah, I share that. I have a soft spot for it as well. Okay, next question. What do we got? Are there any talks about expansions in general to current LionWing published properties? And if so, would they be run as Kickstarter campaigns or as pre-orders? Good question. So I have gone on the record and said I would love to localize and publish the supplements for Picaresque Roman and Convictor Drive, especially Convictor Drive. There's some really cool stuff happening with Convictor Drive supplements right now. Supplements that were written by C. Gray himself, and then supplements that were given his blessing that were designed by the illustrator of the original book. So, hell yes, I want to do more with Convictor Drive. I love Convictor Drive. It is, I think it's our best-selling game to date. So, if there was ever going to be something that I returned to and I published the supplements for, it'd be Convictor Drive. But I also want to do that for Picaresque Roman. And actually, I would bundle things together. I would bundle multiple supplements together, and I would run that as one crowdfunding campaign. Because most people aren't going to show up to a crowdfunding campaign for a supplement. That would be a bad use of our Kickstarter time. However, people might show up for multiple supplements because the value add is better. But also, people might show up for a bundle Kickstarter or a bundle crowdfunding campaign if there were multiple games represented in that bundle, like a supplement for Picaresque Roman and a supplement for Convictor Drive. Now, where it gets tricky is, if you want to bundle together multiple games across different companies, because the licensing and the royalties, it gets muddy. But it can be done. I mean, we did it obviously with the anthology box set that we're printing for Picaresque Roman, Convictor Drive, the second edition of both of those, and Fledge Witch. So it can be done. But I also might just run it as a pre-order campaign because, quite frankly, the law of diminishing returns is absolutely in effect when it comes to supplements. You're never going to have as many people turn out for your supplements as you do your first book. And in fact, the drop-off is like drastic. It's not like, and I'm just using, quick, easy whole numbers here. It's not like you sell 100 copies of your core rule book and then 80 people return to grab the supplement. No, it's like you sell 100 copies of your core rule book and then like 25 people return for the supplement. And then every supplement after that, the drop-off continues to happen. So you have to have a really huge built-in audience from that first core rulebook for it to make any business sense. So you have to be strategic in how you do it. You've got to choose your properties wisely. Like I'm gonna do a supplement for this book because it performed really well, and not for this one because not so much. Of course, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, and I'm sure somewhere in the history of the world, a supplement has sold as many or exceeded the sales of a core rulebook. That's not, those are the exceptions. Those are not the rule at all. I have access to now that I'm working with Diamond, I have access to all this data that I simply would never have had access to before. So I can see sales figures from pretty much any book ever. And I look at those supplement numbers and diminishing returns. It's very real, very real. There are some really, really cool supplements happening, though, for Convictor Drive that I think would probably perform better than your average supplement, though. And that's why I am definitely not closing the door on doing that. Those supplements are really, really cool. In some ways, so the supplements that C. Gray and Group SGR did, the original design circle behind Convictor, those are great supplements. The two supplements, there's now a second supplement. It's just the second supplement of this kind of offshoot of Convictor Drive was just released in Game Market. That little sub-series, which was designed by the illustrator of Convictor Drive, is so rad. It is so, it takes place in the same universe, but it's also set kind of a little bit in the future from when Convictor Drive, the core game, takes place. So you get some really interesting stuff happening there that just would not be possible in the core rulebook. And that kind of thing excites me. So I would absolutely take a look at those supplements because of how different they are. I think people would show up. Okay. I'm rambling about that. Someone says, what the heck is LWM? So if you noticed, not too long ago, a random channel popped up in the Discord, just labeled LWM. So LWM will be announced in January. We are doing, it's something of a presser. We're announcing some things all at once. And LWM is one of those things. There have been a lot of guesses in that chat about what LWM is. And I can confidently say everyone's wrong. All the guesses are wrong. So keep guessing because you haven't gotten it yet. I am excited for LWM because it's not being done a whole lot. Not anymore. So there's a hint for you. It's not being done anymore. So I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on that one. So there's my KG answer. Kind of dodged that one. Okay, next. I know you said you're working with Katakawa for a few TTRPG projects. Yes, we are. And I know you can't or won't confirm any specifics. No, I won't. But do you have anything planned with Arclight? Sorry, I was smiling because I was reading the chat. Do you have anything planned for Arclight? So if I said yes, well, then that would be confirming specifics. So Aiken, you were like, hey, I know you're not going to confirm any specifics, but can you confirm this specific? So I will just leave it at this. I like Arclight. I like Arclight. I think they're a bunch of nice folks over there. Talked to them a couple times. Okay, next questions. Is there anything at all you can say about Sword World? Is there anything at all I can say about Sword World? I have no idea what you mean. But yes, I can say something about Sword World. This is your exclusive for the night. World exclusive. What I can say about Sword World is, I think it's a good game. I think it's a good game. Next question. I also remember you mentioning Shooting Force when you picked it up several months ago. Is that something you're looking to have LionWing bring out officially in English? So Shooting Force is an indie TTRPG from Japan that is a shmup adaptation, not of an existing property. It's, this isn't like a Dodonpachi or something. But it is a shmup in TTRPG form. And I have had several conversations with that designer. And so the company behind that is Namakuji Tebezo. They've done several books. Some of them are really awesome. There's one book that roughly, the name roughly translates to tabletop suspense theater. Super awesome, kind of Persona 4-ish inspired role-playing game. Super cool game. Shooting Force is another one of their books that is just really cool. So, when I'm scouting projects, this was true when I was looking at board games and card games, and it's true when I'm looking at RPGs. I'm looking for stuff, not always, but often I'm looking for stuff that hasn't been done before. I like being first in a lot of things. No one has done a shmup-inspired TTRPG on a large scale. I'm sure, if you go to Itch or something, you're going to find someone who did a shmup TTRPG, right? Like someone somewhere in the history of the world has designed one of these things. But if they did, not many people know about it. And that's not to dog them at all. I'm just saying, like, people don't know about that game if it exists. I'd like to be the company that helps a game like that exist and be seen by people. It is a shorter game. All of that studio's games are fairly small. And I kind of like it for that reason. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It knows exactly what type of game that it is. It's very tightly designed, so there's not a lot of extraneous, needless stuff in it. And really, that is a shmup, right? Like, shmups are quick experiences. You're in and out. And the game keeps that essence in it as well, which is super cool. So I would love to do something with Shooting Force. Nothing is I don't have a contract for that game or anything. But I'd like to have a contract for that game. And I know those folks well. So it's definitely a possibility. Absolutely. I mean, at this point, though, it's like my biggest problem is, where do we fit these things in at? I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about the distribution deal in a minute. Hold on a second. I need to take a drink. Oh, that's good air, right? Hearing me clear my throat. That's good. Okay. Next, how many LionWing projects can we expect to see in 2024? So this is actually, this number is different right now than it was 30 days ago. So 30 days ago, the answer was 3 to 4. And now the answer is, oh God, my math is terrible. 6 to 7. There we go. That's why I publish books, guys. Don't have me do math. Not live. 6 to 7. So obviously not all of those are going to crowdfunding. Probably 3 of those are, maybe 4. We're going to be using a combination of crowdfunding platforms next year. So that's why we'll be doing more crowdfunding campaigns in 2024 than we have in any year past. But not all of them are going to crowdfunding. At least 3 are not going to crowdfunding. Those will be direct-to-market books. Any particular insight as to why the Nocturne system was chosen over Mato Tokyo 2000X? I don't even know what you're talking about. Next question. Assuming you have one, what's your favorite JTTRPG that you have in your collection? My favorite JTTRPG that I have in my collection. So this is a book that I own. This is a book that I own. So this is my favorite book in my collection, not because it's a good game. But you didn't ask about the best book in my collection. You asked about my favorite one. And so this is my favorite book in my collection. This is Magical School Lunar, the tabletop role-playing game adaptation. This was published in the 90s. shortly after Magic School Lunar came out for Saturn. And it was part of the Magius line, which was a universal system that was very, very basic, but was designed to be able to act as a core system for a bunch of different IP-based tabletop role-playing games. So, like, yes, this is the Lunar version of this system, or the Lunar book of this system, because there's not a version of it. This is that system. It's just got Lunar characters and lore and all of that in it. But there's a ton of other stuff in it. There's a Slayers one. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. You can find it on just like a quick search for Magius on Wikipedia. You'll find all of the properties that they turned into one of these super small, basically 500 yen books. This is not 500 yen anymore. I wish it were. But Lunar, like Arc the Lad, is one of my favorite IPs, one of my favorite series. It's tough to have your favorite series be all these dead franchises, let me tell you. But that's probably my favorite book in my collection of JTT RPGs. Okay, let's see here. Next question. Can you tell us anything about the upcoming presser in January? I mean, just that it's kind of a presser. We're going to announce several projects. Yeah, we'll announce several projects. I think it's going to be cool. I think people are going to be excited for it, for what we're going to announce. We've never done anything like this before, where we've announced several things all at once. So that'll be interesting. It'll take place, I hate giving out hard dates because I feel like I miss these dates all the time. But I'll attempt to commit to January the 30th. It's a Tuesday. Last Tuesday of the month. So, Lunar Dragon Song. All right, guys. This is not me being a contrarian. It's a fine game. I'm sorry, it's a fine game. It's a fine game. I mean, like, I get it. It's cool to say it's not a fine game, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to bad opinions. It's a fine game. I mean, of course, it's not Silver Star or Eternal Blue. I'm okay with that. It's fine for what it is. I mean, I think, isn't there a mechanic in that game where if you run, you lose HP when you run? It's pretty fucking stupid. But aside from that, it's a fine game. Next, retro, really? If you were trapped in a zombie apocalypse, which 3 JRPG characters would you want in your group of survivors? Cosmos. Squaw. Because we'd all be freaking out and he'd just be like, whatever. And who would the third be? Who would the third be? I mean, probably Edge from Panzer Dragoon Saga, because he can link with a dragon. So, like, I wouldn't even have to worry about the zombies. I could just hang out and that dragon could just, like, just burn up them zombies for me. So I think those would be my 3. Okay, next. Oh, one more to keep it on topic. What's your biggest LionWing related regret? Ooh, making me dig into my bag of shame. Biggest regret for LionWing. Probably not publishing Testament on our own. You know, we did a co-publishing deal with Japanime on that. And this isn't anything against Japanime. I love Japanime. I just talked to Eric on the phone not long ago, president of Japanime, a couple months ago, just to shoot the shit. I like Heather over there. I like that team a lot. Their primary translator, Maisie's awesome. But, you know, I should have published that one myself, but I didn't have the confidence enough in myself to do that game, to publish it on our own. You know, at that point we'd only done one board game or one tabletop game, and that was Sonoma Coliseum. It was a small game, you know, and it crested like 17,000 on Kickstarter, and I just thought Testament's such a big game with so many components. I was really worried about the cost. And I was really worried at that time about how I would market the game, because I knew nothing about marketing still. Like, I knew nothing about Kickstarter marketing. And so I wasn't confident that I would be able to get enough eyes on that product, get enough eyes on that Kickstarter for us to get the funding total that we would have needed to print that game and turn even the tiniest profit. But looking back on it, you know, I think I had everything that I needed to do that game on my own. I just kind of talked myself out of it. So that's a regret. Okay, next. What games am I playing currently? So what games am I playing currently? I am playing I'm playing Astabros for Genesis, which is a sequel to Demons of Astaborg. It's a Metroidvania. It's a new Genesis game, just came out. They just shipped out the games to backers a couple months ago. I am doing my annual Christmas playthrough of Shenmue. I'm doing my annual. I don't typically play this at Christmas, but it just happened this way. I'm on disc 3 right now of Panzer Dragoon Saga. That's actually why I was thinking about Edge, because I'm playing through that right now. I am playing Gundam Battle Alliance with my son. It's been a cool co-op experience for us to play together. And I haven't been playing, but I've been watching my son play Dragon Quest Monsters, Dark Prince. I can't remember the subtitle. That seems like a super cool game. I don't think I'm playing anything else. Oh, I'm it's actually sitting right next to me. I'm playing some Dark Sector for 360. I love anything published by D3, especially during that 7th gen era, especially like the early to mid gen D3 published stuff, including Dark Sector. I never played Dark Sector. And it's been sitting on my shelf for I don't even know how long. And I was like, you know what? I'm really in the mood for like a 360 era cover shooter. I looked at my stuff. I was like, okay, it's either Inversion, which is just like a Gears of War clone. Well, isn't every like cover-based shooter from the 360 era Gears of War clone? But anyway, it was Inversion or Dark Sector. And I chose Dark Sector. All right. Churcher, I was playing Parasite Eve. I finished that up. Yeah, So I played Parasite Eve. It was one of the first games I played when I got my Poly Mega. And then, yeah, just not too long ago, I was like, you know what? I want to play Parasite Eve again on real hardware. So I played through it again on real hardware. That game's killer. Damn, that game is so good. And like, it still looks so good. Like, I realized I really miss that, like, that PS1 pre-rendered background CG era RPG. Like, I miss that. And Parasite Eve does it better. or at least as good as the best of the games of that era. It looks so good. And like it has such a distinct, obviously it has such a distinct setting and combat system and story. You know, the story makes no fucking sense. I actually, it makes such little sense that this time around when I was playing it, I was like, you know what? I'm keeping notes this time. So so I kept notes the entire playthrough. Because I was like, I'm gonna finally understand this story. So I kept copious notes. And I finished that game. I looked at my notes and I said, I still have no clue what the fuck that game was trying to tell me. So yeah, that was fun. Parasite Eve is one of absolutely the best Christmas games out there. Shenmue is my favorite Christmas game, but Parasite Eve is it is up there. Let's see here. Okay. Questions. What do we got? What's one Christmas present you'd really want? You know, I want a MetaQuest 3. I really want a MetaQuest 3. I want to play Zenith. I want to play Vox Machina, just because I'm like, I want to play Steel Battalion, but I don't want to like break out all the hardware to play Steel Battalion. So I'm like, you know what? Playing Steel Battalion in VR would be really cool. Oh, cool. There's Vox Machina. I'll just play that. So I want a MetaQuest 3. I really want the Genesis module for Polymega because I don't have that. I would love to be able to load my Genesis library onto the Polymega, have it in one place. Trying to think. I mean, that's two Christmas presents, so I kind of broke the rule already. Yeah, I think those are the things that I really want. You know, Churchy, you mentioned Beat Saber. You know, I'm so old at this point. My reflexes are just like absolute garbage. So like Beat Saber does nothing for me. I think there was a time in my life 20 years ago when I would have like really wanted Beat Saber. And now I think I just like embarrassed myself, you know, beyond repair. So like I don't want to play Beat Saber. I've got no interest in Beat Saber. Is Parasite Eve even available on anything that isn't made by Sony? No. Parasite Eve and Parasite Eve 2 are trapped on the PS1. It's wild, right? I mean, I would imagine at some point we're going to find that game on PS Classics, you know, if you pay for the premium tier. I would assume, like, I feel like you're leaving money on the table by not bringing that game to PS Classics. I mean, they brought Valkyrie Profile and Legend of Dragoon, Wild Arms, I think even Wild Arms 2 to PS Classic. They can bring Parasite Eve. But I don't know if Square would go for it. So, you know, I don't know what those licensing deals look like, you know, for Game Pass and PS Classic and all that. I'm sure they're extremely complicated. It's a shame though, you know, that you've got to emulate the damn game to play one of Square's best games in their libraries. I mean, to me, that is one of their best games. Super unique. And dude, like the cutscenes in that game still look good. Like they look way better than they should, you know, 25 years on. Next question. Do you have any favorite characters that come across any playthroughs of any of the games that have been streamed? Big Ass Roman Convictor. Either on the player character side character, game character. You know, I don't know. I have watched all of our actual plays, and I have found all of the characters immensely entertaining. Yeah, I don't know though. I mean, I remember some of those Convictor games were just bonkers. Some of those characters were bonkers. I remember that there was a game with a priest. That someone was a, I think it was Convictor Drive where a character was a priest, right? Or am I making that up? It was one of the first community games, Church, that I think you led in the Discord. I swear there was a priest in there. Yeah, okay, we've already got people chiming in. Yes. I remember that character being fantastic. But I also remember every character in that particular game being fantastic. So I'm just singling out that character because it's the one I remember the most. But all of them are really great. Next question. Oh, this is someone who amended their first question. Have you played or read any of the Shin Megami Tensei systems? I found them late, but I thought it was crazy that 5 different systems have been released up to 2006. I bet they exist, but I didn't come across any Persona TRPGs. Okay, so working backward, there are no Persona TRPGs. Shockingly, there are no Persona TRPGs. Not yet, anyway. And yes, I have played and read some of the Shin Megami Tensei systems. Yep. Cool systems they are. Very cool. I'm already wondering, someone says, how hard it'd be to re-engineer an SMT game for Persona. I don't think very hard. I don't think very hard at all, honestly. Especially if you went with like a Revelations, or Persona 2, where the mechanics are a little bit more vanilla. I mean, truthfully, like all Persona games, mechanics are kind of vanilla. Yeah, I think there's a crossover scenario written by Takeda-san that may have crossed over SMT and Persona. I know that Atlas likes to keep those two properties very separate, though. But there is no standalone Persona book. Like, that is its own contained thing, its own system and all that. Okay. Someone says there are a couple original English games which aim for the Persona vibe. Eidolon, Overarms. Yeah, Overarms. Yeah, the guy behind Overarms lives like 30 minutes that way from me. We keep trying to meet up to get a beer, and like we've been saying that for 3 years. It's never happened. But yeah, there are a lot of RPGs out there, especially of the independently published variety that seek to mimic or are at least inspired by Persona mechanics. Okay, so if you have more questions, drop them in the chat. But those are all the questions that were put in the Discord. So let's talk about project updates. Eldritch is on track. We are nearly finished kind of inserting and cleaning up all of the text for Eldritch. The PDF doesn't release until, I think, March or April. And then the physical copy, I think, is June. So we're still on track to hit that target. Not much to say about Eldritch other than like we've had our nose to the grindstone. We're working on it. We're trying to get it done. Trying to get everything squared away there. Eldritch is a very straightforward book, so it's been a breath of fresh air working on that game. Because like what you see is what you get with that game. Has made it very easy to translate, edit, and playtest. And the layout that we're using, I think is really awesome looking, but it's also pretty straightforward. So the whole development timeline, the whole development process has been both short and straightforward. So Eldritch is, yeah, coming along as it should. Fledge Witch, the 1.0. Hold on, let me go back first. So the beta for Eldritch will be coming earlier than you think. I mean, it's not coming this month or anything. And we might make it in for January. We might make it in for January, but certainly February. Probably sooner than February, but I'm going to say February to be safe. But I mean, like, it's coming along so well and so easily, and like we haven't run into any snags, and we're so on time still that, yeah, I think we'll probably come in before February with that beta. Fledge Witch. Fledge Witch, we're mostly on time. We are realistically 2 to 3 weeks behind. Mostly one because of my vacation. And then the holidays kind of taken more from me than I expected. And then I got sick. But the 1.0 PDF gets released hopefully this week. It'll probably be Friday. We were going to put some finishing touches on it today. We actually just needed to take out a section. We accidentally included the translation notes in the standard PDF. And we were like, wait a second, we got to take those out. So as soon as that's done, then I'm pushing it live. I didn't get done today because the graphic designer is sick. But I just talked to her like 30 minutes before the stream, and she said, yeah, I plan on wrapping it up tomorrow. So Fledge Witch is on time too. Now the good news is to ensure that we're hitting our milestones and our timelines better than we ever have, because that has been an issue in the past, I have brought on some new staff. So LionWing right now is bigger than LionWing has ever been. Gone are the days when it was just me. Thank God those days are gone. There was a time when I was wearing every single hat in the company. Now, I wasn't doing the translation myself, but with some of the earlier translations, I was helping with. I'm no longer doing that, and certainly I'm involved in kind of giving my feedback, and then ultimately giving my blessing on the layout in all the games. But everything else I was doing on my own. It was crazy, and it was impossible to keep up with, especially because, as everyone knows who's been following the company for any length of time, like this is something I do at night. This isn't my full-time job. I have a full-time job, and that's a very full-time leadership job. So it takes a lot of my time. I have kids. I have a wife. I've got like all this shit that takes up my time. And yet I was still trying to wear every hat in the organization, from editor and proofreader, and at times I was the person taking care of like assets, like inserting text and assets, like in Testament. I was the production coordinator. I was the producer. I was the liaison between the freight companies. I was coordinating freight. I was doing all the press releases. I was doing the marketing. It was crazy. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, A, I don't have enough time for this. I'm going to burn myself out. And B, like, I'm not good at half of this shit. Like, and C, like, at least half of this shit I'm not even interested in. Like, it's not stuff I'm passionate about, and it's not in my skill set. But I could still get by because like the workload was low, the projects were small. And also up until like a year and a half ago, I had a different job that I had a lot more time, like, to do other stuff with. And I got a new job a year and a half ago. Yeah, time went out the window. But also a year and a half ago, I was like, I can't keep doing this. So it took me a while, but now the company is bigger than it's ever been. So I actually brought on one of our community members who has been a staple of the community since 2020, since he first backed Gun and Gun. You've seen him around, Fry Guy Fern. Fern is now the production assistant. So he is handling all printing coordination, all printing coordination, printing communication. He's dealing with QA, quality checks, proof checks. I needed someone who was A, really good at that, B, wanted to do that, and C, it was within their wheelhouse to do it. Because I'm none of those things. And we're at a point where, like, I have to have someone who's all of those things. Fern was the obvious pick. So bringing him on board, my hope is that we streamline our processes when it comes to printing, proofing, shipping, fulfillment. I also hope that this cuts down on the errors that we make that contributes to production issues. Now, there are projects like Gun and Gun, when it's like, or maybe not Gun and Gun, Embryo Machine, when it's just issue after issue. And it's like, okay, yeah, some of the text on those cards where we had to, we had to errata, those are on us. Other things are on the printer. Having Fern, I no longer have to worry about the mistakes on our end. That's not to say that a mistake won't slip by. Like, this is a tabletop company. We don't get patches. Mistakes are going to happen, no matter who is the overlord of production proofing. But we're going to be in a much better place with someone who has the skill set designed and who's really good at utilizing that skill set than we were when it was me. So bringing on Fern not only is going to streamline us, it's going to cut down on misprints. Now, fortunately, we haven't really had a ton of misprints when it comes to our RPGs. And that is because we do have a different quality process in place for our RPGs than we do our board games. But even still, there are things to tighten up there too. Fern's going to help us do that. I now have a Japanese relations specialist, someone who is living in Japan, who now helps with brokering deals, helps getting me in front of the right people at large companies, large corporations, because this person has worked at a lot of these large corporations and has even worked in the TTRPG departments of these large corporations. So I have them representing me now on the Japanese business side of things. We're bringing on more marketing. We have a new distribution deal, which also means more in-channel marketing. And we now have a larger team of translators and editors than we ever had before. Oh, we got a bot in here. Fun. Let's see here. What's this guy? All right, where are you? Well, here you go. Yeah, so, in the past, I had used, when it came to translation, I'd used several different translators. And oftentimes it wasn't the same translator on every project. And that just wasn't working. I wanted to kind of like standardize our translations. And I figured the only way to do that was to pretty much use the same translator on as many projects as possible, which was fine when we were only, doing, 1 or 2 projects a year. But as I said, in 2024, we're going to be up to 6 or 7. So I found that translator, by the way, Noel. I found a second translator who I'm just as confident in, who has ties to Noel. That's Jamie. So I have a stronger translation team than ever before. Who they've got the passion, they've got the skill set, and they have the knowledge of Japanese TTRPGs. Like that's a killer package, right? So our translation team is stronger than ever. Different editing process in many cases. You do this long enough, you kind of figure out what does work and what doesn't work. So the team has grown. I think it'll, hopefully with 2024 being our biggest year, in being represented at more conventions and in more stores and in more territories than ever before, than all of the previous years combined. I think hopefully if luck is on our side, we'll continue to grow. So we've had a lot of staff changes lately, all for the better. Let's see here. Someone asked, they've worked on other TTRPG translations, right? A lot of experience. Yes, they have. Not just LionWing TTRPG translations. So don't grow too fast. Points at video games industry the past couple of years. Yeah. Well, fortunately when you're dealing in niche goods like I am, you don't even have the luxury of growing too fast. Like that doesn't happen when your business is Japanese tabletop role-playing games, let me tell you, and let me assure you. There's no growing too fast. There's no growing too fast. You grow at a steady clip. You might grow at like a steadier clip than previous years, but you're not growing too fast. I don't think LionWing is going to buy any of their competitors. I'd be more worried about some numbnuts trying to buy them. I don't know. I don't think that would happen. Like, honestly, I don't think anyone has any interest in Japanese tabletop role-playing games other than Simon. But it's not like, so I don't think anyone's going to be beating down the door like, hey, give me your Japanese tabletop role-playing game business. We need you. I mean, it would be an honor. And I'd be very grateful if someone thought of us in that way. But A, that's not going to happen. And B, I'm not giving this thing up. If anything, I'm doubling down on my role in this company. And if all goes accordingly, I'm hoping for this not to be the thing that I do at night. I'm hoping for this to be the thing that I do during normal business hours. So there's that. And I think that's it. Let me go through everything one more time. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I mean, I guess the last thing that I would talk about, and many of you, if you're in this chat, then you're probably dialed into the Discord or our social already, so you've seen this. It won't come as a surprise. But for the folks who are here who maybe you haven't seen it yet, or the folks who watch this on playback, maybe they haven't been as dialed in. So our books are now in bookstores. Actually, I went down to my local Barnes & Noble, not to find our book, but to get a Christmas present. And was also like, I kind of want to pick up a light novel as well. So like, let me just go over there real quick, see if I want to buy anything. I'm walking. I go to turn the corner and I'm like, hold on. What's that book right there? Sure enough, it's Convictor Drive. So, what the partnership with Diamond Book Distributors has allowed us is the opportunity to be in bookstores across North America and much of the EU. I don't know if we're in Australia, but the EU and North America, we are in bookstores now. We're also finally on Amazon. I ran this company for however many years and had no Amazon representation. Not anymore. That's cool. And being in bookstores and being on a place like Amazon obviously is a huge milestone, especially for an indie publisher like us. Though are we an indie publisher at this point? I don't even know. If we're not an indie publisher, we're at least a small publisher, but maybe we've graduated past that. Not sure, but we're in bookstores. That has been awesome. In fact, what has been great about that will allow us and is allowing us to do all these projects starting in 2024 is, when you get these deals, the next thing before these deals happen, you're sitting on a bunch of stock and you're selling stock either through your store, you're selling it at conventions if you're represented there. But then you get one of these deals and all your inventory gets cleaned out in one order, which is why we're printing Convictor Drive and Picarus Roman second edition. Not necessarily because we planned on printing a second edition, but because we have to, because a bunch of bookstores ordered more stock than we had in our inventory. So that's cool. So you can find our stuff now in bookstores. You can always grab it from the LionWing website, and that includes pre-orders. So, going forward, with all of our books, whether they get crowdfunded or not, at some point you'll be able to pre-order them through Barnes & Noble, through Amazon, through wherever, assuming they don't fuck up some listing and put something up that doesn't exist. But all of our pre-orders will also come through the LionWing site. And let me just make it known, when we do pre-orders through our LionWing site, we will, in some cases, especially the games that don't go to crowdfunding, instead, the games that just go direct to market, pre-ordering from the LionWing store, you will get bonuses that you simply will not get elsewhere. So this will be, additional and exclusive content. It might come in the form of like an exclusive scenario. It might, we kind of did some crossover stuff with our anthology box set that we offered during the Fledge campaign, where we actually crossed over our board game, Cradia, some of those characters with Fledge, with some of our pre-order stuff that's going to be up on the LionWing website. I think, over time you'll even see some crossover things there that'll be pretty cool. But you'll get exclusive things that you just won't get by pre-ordering at an Amazon or a Barnes & Noble or whatever. So look forward to that. We'll also, in some cases, not all cases, have exclusive editions that will only be A, available for pre-order, and B, only available for pre-order through the LionWing shop. And I think not only will you get these exclusive things, you're just going to get more bang for your buck by pre-ordering there. So definitely whenever we throw up a pre-order on anything, especially if it wasn't crowdfunded, be sure to check out the LionWing shop first. Yeah, someone said I go through Barnes & Noble's website or local indie bookstores. So I love supporting bookstores. Of course, if you got like a local mom and pop bookstore, oh yeah. Tell them, yeah. See if you can order our stuff through them. If they don't have access to it, though I think every bookstore in the US, Canada, and most in the EU have at least access to order our stuff. But if they don't, tell them to get in contact with me. I will hook them up with like a custom order. So I love supporting your local economy. But also, if you don't have a local mom and pop shop, if your choice is Barnes & Noble or Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I mean, that's just my opinion. The stuff that I've ordered from Barnes & Noble usually gets to me looking like it wasn't ran over by 8 cars. And with Amazon, you just never know what you're going to get. From the start, you never know if you're going to get, a product or product details that don't exist or aren't accurate. And even to the end, when you finally get your inaccurately described product, you never know what kind of presentation it's going to be when it gets to you. So, someone said, holy crap, just checked my local indie bookstore and they have a listing for Convictor Drive. Yeah. That's awesome, right? Like it's like that moment I'm walking through Barnes & Noble. I'm like, oh my goodness. That's Convictor Drive. I knew this was happening. Like, this wasn't a surprise. I knew this was happening. I just didn't expect it to like be in my bookstore. So it's cool hearing that your local bookstore, your local indie bookstore, even better, has a listing. So that's fun. We are doing a larger library campaign with Convictor Drive. We got a lot of interest from the National Librarians Association. Back in November, we did a presentation at something called LibraryCon. It's just it was a virtual convention just for librarians, where a bunch of publishers they have time slots over the course of a couple days, and they get a chance to kind of pitch all their products. Obviously, I pitch Picaresque, Convictor, Fledge, Eldritch, and then a couple other things that we've got coming down the pike. And so I was contacted after all of that by the person who set up the convention. It was like, hey, we got a lot of interest in Convictor Drive. Our librarians think that this would be a really great after school, like an after school club book for them, because the game does tackle important topics, specifically trauma. And so I think you're probably going to see a pretty big representation of Convictor Drive. And so seeing you say, hey, they have a listing for Convictor Drive and not like Picaresque Roman, not surprising to me if they're going to carry one of our stuff or one of our games. I definitely think that you're going to see Convictor Drive represented a lot. So let's see here. Someone said, on that note, would you encourage or even support local demos of LionWing games to help promote them through independent retailers? Yes. Yes, I would. And if you want to do that, you should get in contact with me, because I'll give you special stuff to be able to run those. So yes, all day. Yes, that's my answer. I do know that there's a possibility. There's a Joseph Beth booksellers 20 miles away from me. We might be doing kind of a LionWing game there in store. Something we're trying to put together with them. So yeah, if you want to do that at your local place, absolutely. And really, even though we have this, this book distribution deal, you can never have enough marketing. You just can't. So having our stuff represented at all levels, big and small, is really key to LionWing's success and our continued growth. And when I say continued growth, that just means the ability to continue doing what it is that we're doing, except do even more of it. To be able to publish even more books, so that maybe in 2025, it's not 6 or 7 books, it's 10 to 12 books. So I am taking a slightly different approach to how we're doing these books and what books we're going to be localizing and publishing in the future, to allow us to have quicker turnarounds and to allow us to have a larger presence in bookstores. Things like this help, if you want to hawk our stuff at your local bookstore, your local TTRPG store, or whatever. Yeah, and if you want something special for that, definitely reach out to me. Okay. Going back up. I missed a couple things here. Sorry about that. Let's see. Which craft would you specialize in with Fledge? Songcraft? Yeah, Songcraft. Okay. Looping back to the quote, interesting pre-orders for SMT Tokyo Conception. I don't even know what this game is. Should anyone who pre-ordered that cancel it, or just expect it not to come out that soon? I don't even know what this project is, so I can't give you any details, and I don't really know how to answer that question. Yeah, other than to say that anything that would be, in the future with any project, if you can pre-order it on Amazon, check out some other places as well to make sure you're not shortchanging yourself on some additional goodies. Someone said both might be Barnes and Noble's failed. Didn't check Books a Million. I know we're in Books a Million. I do know we're in Books a Million. They ordered quite a few books, and that doesn't mean your local one is going to have them, right? But they might. Speaking of conventions, I've only frequented small anime conventions, but they tend to not have booths or spaces for TRPGs. Are there specific locations or conventions you have your eye on? I'm hoping with the boom and JTRPGs getting localized, they may get more visibility in general. So I would first say, let's temper the verbiage about there being a boom in JTRPGs getting localized. Because I don't know if it's a boom. I'd love it if it were a boom, because I think we'd be at the forefront of that. But certainly there is greater visibility. I know that for our representation at conventions in 2024 is actually kind of coming together rather quickly, and we're trying to get into places that are already booked up, because at this point it's December. A lot of the conventions, at least through October of next year, pretty much booked, right? But that is the magic, and one of the benefits of having a large distributor by you is, they can leverage their relationships, they can leverage their weight and their influence to kind of get you into places where you simply would not have been able to without them. And so I think what I'm hoping for, the conventions that we will be able to get into kind of last minute for 2024 will be anime conventions, and will be, certainly I'm looking at tabletop game conventions. But truthfully, when I look at like our data and I look at our audience and who's buying this stuff, yes, we have a very healthy customer base who are into board games and tabletop role-playing games. But I bet they only account for about 65% of the people who are buying our stuff right now. The other 35% are not really, quote, gamers. They are more folks who are spending their discretionary income on manga, light novels, and anime, not board games. So, I got to meet my market where they're at, which means we're going to meet some of our market at traditional tabletop conventions, because again, that is the majority of the market, right? 65%, it's the majority of the market, but we also have to go elsewhere. So we kind of exist in this interesting kind of limbo state of where we've got a large market share of TTRPG gamers buying our stuff, and then this not majority, but still very sizable audience who are probably not going to show up at a board game convention. So I got to find them, and I got to meet them at the conventions they are going to go to, which are going to be book conventions, anime conventions, all that. Yeah, definitely. In the past 5 years, we've gotten more JTTRPGs than we have in the 5 years prior to that. And I think that in the 5 years to come, we're going to have more than we've had in these past 5 years. I think it shows a healthy interest in Japanese role-playing games. So that excites me as someone who did a hard pivot into JTTRPGs. I want and need there to be a market. So, like when Simon came out and said that, they had struck a deal with, oh my gosh, it'll come to me. I keep wanting to say fear. It's not fear. Oh, this is embarrassing. Thank you, Boken. Um, I saw some chatter in the group like, oh, Bradley, what do you think of that? And I'm like, what I think of that is, hey, more money for me. Because the more awareness there is of JTTRPGs, the better LionWing does. And CMON's a big company, so they're going to be able to market the genre in ways that I can't. So I'm like, I think people thought I was going to be, I don't know, I was going to feel some kind of way about this. And I'm like, I do feel some kind of way about this. I feel very excited by this. Thank you. So yeah, this is good. And I hope that the market continues to grow. I'm getting kind of like some out of focus stuff going on here. I hope the market continues to show growth. I mean, at the same time, how many companies can you have doing it? I don't know. At what level is their market saturation? But at what level is their market saturation for manga? Well, I mean, that's the top grossing genre of all book genres for the past several years. And in fact, for 2022, the gross for the manga and light novel genre was greater than the gross of all other book genres combined. So that gives me hope, because as I'm finding out, a lot of my audience is in that demographic. So I'm like, yes, please keep growing. I want that market to keep growing, because I think that's good for my market too. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Boken's got they've got some cool stuff. So that'll be good. That'll be good for CMON. That'll be cool to see them, get into the arena. And yeah, I mean, someone had not reached out to me, but I was talking with someone privately, and they said like, are those books that you had reached out about, or are those books that you wanted? Hey, I'm a little bit more in focus now. That's good. And they're not books that I wanted, but I'm glad they're getting localized. That'll be cool. Okay. Someone said I would love to see LionWing over on the West Coast at SoccerCon. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure where we're ultimately going to land in 2024 at all these conventions. And I think it's going to be, in some cases, kind of like last minute with some of these things, because I'm having to do some back alley dealings to get us into these things. So who knows? We might end up there. I don't know if, but like, and I'm also trying to be realistic. I don't know if we'll end up on the West Coast. We might. I mean, Diamond obviously is at like every convention ever. So I'm basically going to go wherever they tell me to go. And if they tell me go to SoccerCon, then I will say that's where I'm going. West Coast, here I come. Someone in the chat said, hey, just got here. Was Double Shout discussed? Yes, briefly at the very top of the show, actually. It was the first topic that I addressed in the questions and answers. So catch it on playback. It's right at the beginning, so you won't have to go too far into the video to hear what I had to say about it. Okay. Alandar, I missed your question here. You said fair point on the manga / light novel buyers. I wonder what the market is for scenario books or replays. So I do too, honestly. As a guy who's doing this, I wonder what that market is as well. I think replays have a chance to be like the sleeper hit of the genre, especially for if the demographics who are buying JTTRPGs remain the same. I think replays have a chance to surprise people in the West. Because if the folks who are buying JTTRPGs are folks who are mostly going to the local bookstore to grab a light novel or the latest entry in their favorite manga, they want to read a story. And that's all replays are. Right? It's a story. Transcribed by people around a table playing a game. So I think replays have a chance to do big business. If positioned, explained, marketed, and priced correctly. I think a $10 replay is probably where you're going to get the most return. I don't know if people would be willing to spend much more than $9.99 on a replay. And I wouldn't do a hardcover on a replay either. So you keep the printing costs down, and therefore you could afford to offer it at a $9.99 MSRP price point, which really means as a publisher, you're getting $5. You're getting $5 for every copy of that sold at like a Barnes and Noble. Sometimes you'll get a little bit less than $5. So, you really gotta watch your costs there, because it's got to make sense. Because obviously, you're not making a lot of money on, getting $5 per book. Which means you got to print a lot. Which means you got to sell a lot. Which then begs the question, are there a lot of people who want to buy a lot of your replays? So like, it's a risk. It's definitely risky. But right now, the JTTRPG genre in general is risky, because no one knows for certain if this is going to work out, because it hasn't been done really, not historically on any sustained large-ish level. I think it's going to work out. I wouldn't have made the pivot into it if I thought it wasn't going to. But, truthfully, no one really knows. We're just we think we know where it's going, and we think it's going to work out. And replays are an even bigger what if. They're a bigger question mark. Someone said the term replay is a much catchier name than actual play. I got to be honest, I just hate the name actual play. I use it because it's the industry standard. It's what people look for when they're trying to find a video. But I don't like the term, because to me, it's a very nebulous term. And you could argue that replay is also a very nebulous term. I just think actual play, I've used the term actual play. For instance, when I first started talking about this stuff, and I used the term actual play in front of my wife, for instance, who's not a gamer at all. And she was like, what the hell is an actual play? And I was like, it's where people actually play the game. And, it's usually it's an audio recording, or it's a video recording, or sometimes it's written down somewhere. And she even said, I would not have guessed that from the name, even though the name seems very obvious. If I were searching for something and I saw actual play, I'd say, I don't know what that is. And then I'd just keep scrolling. And so when you're thinking about marketing, you got to think about people like my wife, because you absolutely have to cater to your hardcore audience. But like, your hardcore audience is never really going to grow. You grow through also bringing in the larger mainstream audience. And if the mainstream audience is like, well, what the hell is an actual play? The odds of them seeing something called an actual play, asking themselves, what the hell is an actual play? And then sitting with that and saying to themselves, I want to figure out what that is very low. Most of the time, it's if you have to question it, you're not going to engage with it. So yeah, actual play, I think, is a pretty terrible terminology that is very insider. And insider things don't sustain businesses. I haven't purchased many replays because my Japanese is weak, but there's a lot of gimmicks with them, including special notes and, unique custom rules used. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think replays are really cool. They offer insights into the game that simply don't exist if you don't read them. Like, that's the way it is. It's why we included the replay in our very first book. Because I knew that there were going to be people who had backed all of our board games, who were not into tabletop role-playing games, but were going to check out the book anyway because it was from us. And I was like, okay, well, I got a choice here. I can either keep this replay in or I can cut it. If I cut the replay, it's not going to change the game. The game is the game. No one's going to lose any mechanics. Except the replay explains the mechanics in a way that reading about the mechanics never will. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I didn't think more than about 2 minutes on if I was going to keep that replay or not. Because I knew that replay and what it was going to offer was going to be invaluable. Not to mention the replay was just funny. Like, it was a good replay. But it was gonna add value to that book. It was going to add value to the learning curve. It was actually going to lessen the learning curve. So I think replays have multiple purposes. Is an actual play where you watch people play. It is. Yep. A replay is a written summary of a previous actual play. Yes, that is correct. Although sometimes what's transcribed and turned in the replay wasn't like recorded for like a video. So for instance, the picaresque Roman replay was recorded on audio. It was never put up anywhere. That audio was captured for the sole purpose of transcribing it and putting that replay into the book. So there's some nuance there. Next question. Do you think that non-traditional models for monetization of replays might work? Something like a Patreon set to charge only when a new chapter or whatever drops. Do a revenue split with the translator. I do. I do think that non-traditional models of monetization for replays would work. I think people would be rather interested in that model, actually. I always go for the replays in the core books in SMTX. It actually clarified a lot of things about the system. Same with the included scenario. So, yes, it's funny. I did a hard pivot into role-playing games because I'm a bad business person. I mostly made that pivot because role-playing games are what I play. LionWing was taking away so much. It was taking up so much of my time. It was taking me away from my family so much. Where I was like, you know what? I'm like, at this point, the only way that I'm going to sacrifice time away from my kids, because at the time my son had just been born, so he was a baby. So I was like, the only way that I'm going to keep taking away daddy time is if I do shit that like I really care about and that I'm really passionate about. I don't play a lot of board games anymore, right? Like, I still play board games. I still have board games. I played a lot of board games in my past. But the truth is RPGs have, since finding them, have always been my preferred tabletop genre. And so it got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm going to do this LionWing thing only if I do stuff that I'm super passionate about. And I'm really only super passionate about tabletop role-playing games. So here we go. Pivot. And no one's really doing this. I love being first at things. Not that I was a first at publishing Japanese TTRPGs. Nope. Plenty came before me. But there aren't a lot, and there certainly weren't a lot then. And not many people were doing Kickstarters for them. Yes, Kodadama was. I got it. It just wasn't happening a lot. I was like, I'm doing it because I want to and I need to. But despite being the guy who loves RPGs and who now has a book publishing company, I really struggle with reading comprehension when it comes to reading rules and then understanding how those rules actually look and play. So some of that decision making that took me a whole 2 minutes of deciding whether that replay was going to go in our first JTT RPG or not was also informed by me saying, I needed this replay to fully understand this book. So for me, I am that person who I need, in many cases, a replay or a scenario, or at least an actual play, to take the words on paper and put it into real life. Because if not, I struggle. And yeah, I can make it happen, but I just like fumble my way through the first couple sessions. And I'm already fumbling my way through the first couple sessions, even after I've seen it played or I've read a replay. I'm still, an idiot and trying to get my bearings. But I'm less of one of those if I've got something other than just the rules to read. So, and I assumed I can't be the only person like this in the world. So maybe other people will find value in this replay thing as well. Yes, Noel, that is why I pay you. Partially why I pay you. Pivoting a little bit, who's your favorite party member in Lodos? It's okay to say D-Lit. I mean, I like D-Lit. That's so like a boring answer, but like what is there another answer? I mean, yeah, I mean, Dietlit is popular for a reason, right? I mean, I like Parn. I like Parn a lot. Yeah, I'm thinking like, do I like Parn or Dietlit more? As a kid, it was Parn. He was he's at the front of the party. He's got the sword. He's swinging the thing. I wanted to be the guy swinging the thing. So for nostalgia purposes, I guess if I had to choose, I'd say, well, it's probably Parn because he was the character that I liked first. So there's my answer. Joining the pioneers, indeed, Alandar. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, so many people came before LionWing doing this. And without them, I don't think LionWing exists, right? So it is cool to be mentioned in the same breath as the people who got to the party way before me, Like as a fan first, that's really cool. I don't talk about that side. I don't show that side because I'm like, I got to run this business. But like, at the end of the day, I'm a fan. And I probably talked a lot more about my fandom in the beginning when the company was smaller. And now that the company is much bigger, it's just harder to talk about that things. And I used to say on these LionWing Talks all the time, like, hey, I chose this game to localize because I just wanted a translated version of the game and I wanted to be able to play it myself. And certainly that still plays into my scouting, but it's no longer the driving force behind it, as sad as that is. When you get picked up by a big book distributor and you're working with these big companies and IPs are involved and big money is involved, you no longer just get to pick the stuff that you like. Now I'm finding myself, I'm kind of doing like, the old actor thing. If you see these interviews with certain actors, the interviewer will ask them like, how do you decide which projects you're going to which roles you're going to go for, which projects you're going to sign up for. And usually they'll say, my process is one for them and one for me. Meaning like, I'm going to do a movie for them, the fans, then I'm going to do a movie for me. That fans might not really even like, but I like it. And I'm finding that I'm kind of doing that a little bit more. One where I'm like, people are going to like this, and then I'm going to like this. And hopefully the two overlap more often than not. One that the people like that I also like. Are there any games you've worked with for LionWing that you're looking forward to? Oh, okay. Are there any games that we've worked on that I'm looking forward to playing with my son? Yeah, Fledge Witch. So talk about a one for them, one for me, Fledge Witch. That was a for me thing because I wanted an all ages game. I even talk about this in the afterword. I wanted an all ages game to play with, not just with my son. Now my son will be the one who I play with at first because he's 6. My daughter's 3. She won't come until later when it comes to playing games with. But I chose that game at least in part because I could play it with them. So I'm looking forward to playing Fledge Witch with them. Now, Sinome Coliseum is another game that I'm really looking forward to playing with my son. It's so easy. You're just rolling dice. There's so much RNG in that game. It's ridiculous. But that's kind of the magic of that game, is you go into it knowing this is just a dice roller. And there'll be some skill involved, but it's mostly not skill. So I'm really looking forward to playing that with him. And right now, for the foreseeable future, I mean, we'll play. I'll introduce Wild Hunt Festival to him, and that'll probably be it until he's a little bit older. I'm certainly not going to introduce Picaresque to him. I'm not going to introduce Convictor to him. Things like Testament and Gun, he just needs to be older to comprehend the mechanics anyway. So I really think the only ones that he could comprehend right now are Fledge Witch and Sinome. In a couple of years, I think he will be able to comprehend Wild Hunt Festival. So I'm looking forward to those. That'll be pretty special. And he likes all the same stuff I like, whether that's because he sees me like it and therefore he wants to like it too, or because there's just something in us that predisposes him to liking the things that I like. I don't know. Probably a combination of both. So it'll be a glorious day when I can put Fledge Witch on the table with us and I can play it with him, play with my wife. Again, not a gamer. I want to get her into the genre a little bit. Like, she's got to at least play some of our games so she knows like what her husband's doing with all this time away from her. And I am so looking forward to the day when I can play it with my son, my daughter, and my wife. That'll be cool. Churcher said, legit, I love Convictor to death, but Fledge Witch definitely has a soft spot in my heart. Yeah. They're all very different games. That is sort of a prerequisite. I said it in an interview at some point. I think when I was with Mildred, the gaming monk, that interview. I think I said, I don't really like to do the same project twice just because it's not creatively fulfilling. And because I am spending so much time away from other things and other people, this stuff has to be really meaningful. It's got to make an impact. It's got to be creatively fulfilling, and I've got to be into it. And so doing the same project twice is boring. Now, that's not to say I won't revisit another property. Again, I have interest in supplements and expansions. I just can't do it back to back. And I can't even do games back to back. That's hard. That's hard for me. We kind of did that with Testament in Wild Hunt Festival. And it was a bit of a slog because of it, behind the scenes. I'm like, how much more can I look at these fantasy characters? I need something different. That's probably why the next project was Gun. Someone said Fledge Witch is a great choice for that. On the opposite end of ages, If I can wrap my head around Ruin Breakers, I might try to rope my grandmother into play. Now that would be cool. I would love to be able to. I would love to have had the opportunity to rope any of my grandparents into this stuff. They died when I was way younger. Unfortunately, my last surviving grandparent just died last week. I go to the funeral tomorrow, but yeah, like getting older generations into these games, I think is really important, because I have found you open the doors to new possibilities for them. I remember like sitting my mom down at some point and saying, "Hey, I just want you to watch this video game. Like, if not, you don't need to play it. You don't need to like it. Like, this stuff means something to me. I at least want you to watch just for a little bit what this thing is that means so much to me." And, after that, we had a conversation about it. She engaged me in some dialogue, and had good questions about it that she would not have had otherwise. And I think from that, she had a greater appreciation for the medium. But I think she also better understood, like, oh, I get it now, Bradley. Like, I kind of understand why you like these things so much. I think, tabletop games have an even greater ability to do that because of the immersion, because of what they ask of the player, and because of what you are doing as the player. So, yeah, getting a grandparent into that's really cool. I would love that for you, to be able to have that kind of experience with her. Partially out of jealousy, because I'll never get to have that, but also just for you, I think that would be a cool thing for another human to do. Thank you, Jake, for your condolences. Appreciate it. Yeah, it hits differently. If you're close with a grandparent, it always sucks. It hits different, though, when it's the last one. It's just because that generation is lost, right? And there's no getting that generation back from your family. So it means something a little bit different this time around. Okay. I think I'm caught up. Going back through. A friend of mine, her answer was either Slain or Ito. So I hate Slain. Just, I'm glad Slain has a fan somewhere out there, and I'm glad it's your friend, and I'm glad it's not my friend. Don't tell your friend. No, we can keep that just between us and this chat. But talk about a character who almost ruined the series for me. Yuck. 2 hours. I'm telling you, I can't get under it. I just can't get under it. Churcher says Slain is definitely a priest and not a wizard. I think I'd agree with that. It's also a tool. Okay, so 2 hours. We've covered a lot of ground here. Thank you so much to everyone who joined. There's still a lot of you still watching live. What is wrong with you? Are you still watching me ramble for 2 hours? But I appreciate that you did. I appreciate that you put up with me. I appreciate that you asked questions, that you engaged. That's what makes this whole thing enjoyable. It is the connectivity piece. That is why I ultimately chose to land on tabletop games and not something else, not like video games. We had a short stint in video games, but I landed here because the connectivity you get with tabletop games is unmatched. It is unmatched. You don't get it anywhere else. You get other types of connectivity with other mediums, and those types of connectivity are awesome as well. But this is my type of connectivity. This is the one that speaks to me, and I think it's the only medium that provides this type of tethering. And I think now more than ever, it's really important to be tethered to people. And doing a show like this, and to have you all engaging in the chat and asking questions and just providing feedback and commentary. This is the type of thing that makes it all worth it. this is the type of thing that when I'm like, gosh, how many hours have I spent away from family? I can sit back and say, but it was hours away from family, but it was hours well spent. And at this point in my life, when I realize that I'm playing on my back nine, I'm not on my front nine anymore. These are the types of experiences that I really cherish. So thank you to everyone who joined in on the conversation. Thank you to everyone who dropped a question in the Discord for me, who couldn't be with us live, but you participated through the question. And then thank you to everyone who's going to watch us on playback. Because even if you didn't catch it live, or even if you didn't submit a question at all before the show or during the show, you catching the show on VOD is just as important as being here. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for supporting in LionWing. Thank you for believing in LionWing. We've had a lot of new people come into the server. We've had a lot of new people saying, telling me like, I've never even heard of you guys until now. And that is super awesome to me. Every time I hear that, it's like a dopamine release. It is super cool to know that more and more people are finding out about us. Not because I think it's cool that people find out about the company that I run, but it's super cool finding out that there are people who are into this stuff, that are into the thing that we are producing, that are into this really niche thing. And it's from folks like that that are going to take this genre and carry it forward and make it bigger. And to help it become something bigger. I love all of the new faces that we've seen with what we've got on the horizon. I think we're going to see a lot, more faces, the things that we've got coming down the pike. I'm very excited about. I think, some of these projects are just super wonderful. And so I hope you guys are going to feel the same way as well once we announce whatever those projects are going to be. So thanks for hanging out with me for 2 hours. It's been fun. I don't know the next time I'll do this. Apparently right now I'm doing it like once a quarter. I would love to get back to a place where I'm doing it more frequently. I don't know if I'll ever go back to a place where I do it weekly again. But I'd love to do it more frequently than once every 3 months. The things that we've got coming down the pike, I think there'll be more of a need or desire for these types of shows to happen more frequently. So hopefully 2024 is an increase in a lot of things, not just releases. Maybe it's the increase in LionWing Talks again. So again, appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And I will, at minimum, I'll see you around the Discord. And I certainly will talk to you in January with the announcements we got coming down. So until next time, take care, everyone.